Hello, everyone. So, I mentioned the other day about doing a little tutorial. Good opportunity here is Slav Jerry just put out some early releases of his new 3406E 2WS, which is absolutely fantastic. And I've added some stuff, some trucks, and one upgraded engine, but we can kind of go through that process. So, very first thing, there's some programs that you're going to need if you're going to do any type of alterations to pretty much anything in this game. And if you're going to play this game for very long and use mods, you're probably going to be doing alterations. So you need these programs. They're free. You can download them. You don't have to pay anything for them. You can pay for them if you want to, but you don't have to. And there's a multitude of them you can get that are, whichever one you prefer. Myself, I use WinRAR. That's one of them. Another one is 7-Zip. Again, you can go out on Google, both of those, download them. Pretty simple stuff. No breaking science type stuff to downloading those programs. Another program you're going to want or need is Notepad++. Same thing. It's a free program. Go get it, throw it in there. You can use the notes that's generally part of your computer or Windows, I guess. But Notepad++ makes it a little easier when you're doing things. One other program or per se mod that you're going to want to get is you're going to want to go to Zmod's site and get his def generator or definition generator. It's not a mod that goes in the game. It's actually basically like an application that goes on your desktop, and we'll run through real quick how to use it. It saves you a ton of time, and you can do mass updates and changes to engine files. Certain modders have their files set up where you can't use it, and it makes it very painful if you're wanting to add a bunch of trucks to an engine. So basically, general concept is any truck in either game, ATS or ETS2, can be added to any engine. And you can run any engine in either game. So now on ETS2 stuff and the way that the files are set up, it's much more difficult than ATS. It's very hit or miss just the way the files are set up on whether it's going to show up in game. But for the most part, you can follow this guide basically of how to do it, and generally it will show up in game. So first thing we're going to do is we got the file here. So I'm going to open the def generator, and the def generator is very simple. So you can search through your files via this way, or you can just drag the file into it. So I'm going to drag the file into it. So now you see here, these are all the trucks that are already in this mod. Okay. So if you want to add, say, one additional truck, you just come to the bottom of your list, hit return. It'll put it down to the next one. So each one has to be its own line item, and just type in the internal truck name and then hit return again. Hit save and close, and it puts it right back wherever you drug it from. It puts it right back into that same folder. In this case, it's my mod folder. Then this closes out. It's already in the mod folder, and you can go in game, and that truck is added. Those engines should show up whenever you go to the shop. So what we're going to do, we're actually not going to open that yet. So we're going to add some beefed up engines to this file, and then we will go back and check. So like Zmods, he has a separate open def for each engine file, and that's how you would access it. Bob Jerry has it set up to where it's all inside one single file. So you open, if you have WinRAR, you can just double click it. I think generally they come as a zip folder. Same thing, you can just double click it. And then you come in here to the def. You go to the def file, vehicle, truck. Now this is all the trucks. This is that same list that we just seen in the def generator. What I generally do is usually Pitster's truck is towards the top of the list. That's usually the truck I pick to add stuff to, and then that just makes it easier to find it whenever you're doing it, and it always generally pops back up at the top of the list. So the engine, so these are the engines. So you have, this one is one I've put in already. These 4 were the ones that come from Slav Jerry. So you get those 4 choices if you don't make any alterations to the engine files. So what I generally do is I have 4 different, essentially, horsepower variants that I add to each engine, or each engine basically. And each horsepower variant has 2 variants within itself. So I usually do an 850, an 855. I'm calling those basically one set. A 1050, a 1055, that's one set. A 1250, a 1255, another set. And then a 1550, 1555. That's your 4th set. So the differences between those engines is all the ones that end in 50 have stock RPM settings and stock torque curves. I haven't messed with any of those items in the engine file. All I'm doing is adding horsepower and torque. The ones that end in 55, I have adjusted the RPM settings, I've adjusted the torque curves, and I've adjusted the Jake brake settings, either actually changing the settings on the Jake brake or just changing the parameters or the limits of the RPM for the Jake brake. We'll go through these fairly quick. So what I'll do is pull this one up. So we'll go through and do the 55s real quick because I've already went through here and adjusted these torque curves. And basically, as far as I'm aware of, a 1 is the maximum for the torque curve. That means you're getting the full amount of torque at that RPM setting. Anything less than that, that's a percentage less than the full amount of the torque for the engine for that RPM setting. And it just builds a range, from basically below idle to your peak. So that's what these torque curves are. These have already been adjusted. So I basically have it set up so that it responds with the full torque from basically idle to the top end of the RPM range. It's just slightly less than full at each end. But from start to finish, basically from the point you let off the clutch at idle till red line, you're getting the full amount of torque for each one of those RPM levels. So this is the setting for your Jake brake. Most engines are set at 1.0. So anything less than 1.0 is going to be lower. So there are some that go up to 2, 2.5, etc. So 1.0 is generally your kind of baseline. This just says how many jake brake positions you have. This particular engine has 3, some have 2, some have 1. Hell, some don't even have any. And in that case, you wouldn't even mess with this. So these are your RPM data settings. This tells you what the engine idles at, what RPM, your overall RPM limit. You can set if you want a different limit for neutral or set it the same. This is for your low gear. So this is the low end that the RPMs will go down to the high upper end of RPMs in low gear. Same thing for high gear. And then you have a power range. So again, I've adjusted this down to lower than idle. And then this one lower than idle, and the engine brake lower than idle. The reason I do that is I want the jake brake to bring me all the way down to idle. Most of these are set higher than idle, like around 1100, 1200 RPM. So the jake brake just kind of drops out before you get down to an idle. I set it up to do it this way. And this is how you would do that. And then this section up here is kind of this has got the truck name. So this is where you'd put the truck name if you're doing this manually. You have to change this if you're adding engines to a number that you know what it is. So this has the 1055 horsepower. Put it here as well. This is that number that's been converted into kilowatts. Then your pound-feet of torque is 3,800 for this engine. This is that number converted to Newton meters. I generally don't mess with this. It's set by the mod maker. And then this number here, this torque number here, is the same as this one. This is in Newton meters. So the key thing is a lot of people talk about horsepower on these engines. The game only recognizes this one line item on every engine. So you can put 10,000 horsepower in this and not change this number from whatever it was originally set at, and it's not going to see any difference other than whenever you go to the shop, you're going to see an engine that says 10,000 horsepower, but it's not going to react or act like it has 10,000 horsepower if you don't change this number to something equivalent to that. Now, as far as the numbers between horsepower and pound-feet or Newton meters, it's just you can pick whatever you want. You can do research and go hardcore like a lot of people do, or pick some numbers that work. I've played this game for quite a while, and these are the numbers that I like to play with. But you can set it to whatever you want. But like I say, just know that these numbers up here, all these numbers up here are for, is so that you can tell the engines apart when you're in the shop. This number right here is the only number that changes anything as far as horsepower and torque. These numbers change how it reacts to this, whatever this is set at. And these numbers change how it reacts as well, along with this one. So, I mean, basically from here down is very important. It changes how it reacts in the game. This number is how much force it's utilizing. If that makes any sense. All right, so I already got this one. So a lot of these only allow or will pick up 3 numbers in this spot. So I just generally do that instead of putting 1055 in here. I call it 106. 1050, I call it 105. So my low end ones, I can put all three. So 850 and 855. So we're going to change this up to an 850 or 855. And I have another thing is if you're going to do this, you're going to want to build a cheat sheet. So I have like, I don't know, 300 plus trucks that I usually add to these engines. And then I've gone in and done the math, done the conversions, and picked some stuff here. I do this enough, I usually remember it off the top of my head, but I've got it on this spreadsheet if I ever forget and need a reminder. So for the 855s, 850, so 850 and 855, 1050, 1055, etc. Each one of those has the same kilowatt and same Newton meters, pound feet. The only difference is you're changing these torque settings or torque curves, and it makes a difference, and the RPM settings, which makes a difference. So for an 855, that's going to be 634 kilowatts. It's going to be 3,000 pound feet. And it's going to be 4067 Newton meters. So key thing when you're in here making changes in this stuff, you got to pay very close attention to what you're doing. And spaces, if you accidentally overwrite something or delete something, it's going to screw it up. So you have to pay very close attention when you're making changes in these files. So 4067 goes there. So now that has changed this to the Newton meters to 4067 for this engine. So the way I usually do it is I save it. Again, I'm doing this in Note. I could do these in Notepad++, and it changes the way it looks, but this all still looks the same. And the key thing with Notepad++ is you can do mass changes. We might go through one of those here later. So key thing, this is an SII file. So you see right now it's trying to save it as a text file. So I just save it to my desktop and I change this to all files. Now you see it changes this, but I've got to go in here and change this name to 855. Right here at the end, hit enter, and it pops up on my desktop over here. So I can, since I'm using the same torque curves and all this data is the same, I can just reutilize the same one for all of these that end in 55. So this one would be 126, which is going to be the 1255. That changes this to 932. Changes the torque to 4650 pound feet. Newton meters is 6304. And remember, you got to change that in both of these spots to 6304. So now this one's done, and you save it. And remember to change it to not a text file. Oop, see, right there, I fat fingered it and added something. So you want to make sure that's right. Save it. Boom, pops up on my desktop. And then the last one, we'll do, or last one of these anyway. Change the Newton meters. And now this one's ready to save. All right. So I can close that. So now I've got those over here. This is actually going to probably fill up down through here. So I got 4 more of these to do. So now what I do is I go back here, and what I can do is actually show you how to do it in Notepad++ real quick. So generally you have to drag these out to get Notepad to register. So it pops up over here. So then you right click on it, and if you got Notepad++, it should show up in your options. You hit edit with Notepad, and it brings it up. So see, it looks basically the same. It just has some more options in it. So now we're going to do the 50s. And like say those, I use the stock settings. So these are the stock settings for the torque curves, the engine brake, all the RPM settings, all that's I'm not going to touch any of this. The only thing I'm going to change is the horsepower and torque up here. So first one we'll do is the 850. That one's 634. So his 700 horsepower has actually got a little more oomph than this one's going to have. So there you go. Same thing when you go to save these. Generally, this one will automatically do it in Notepad++ where you don't have to change it. But if it doesn't, you want to make sure it says all and not a text file. There it is. So now that I've got this one set up, again, I can just keep going without having to go back and pull one out of here. This is 783. 3,800 pound-feet. 51, 52 for Newton meters. 51, 52 there as well. Again, now this one's ready to save. Desktop. 105. It's on all types. Good to go. Save. Boom. On the desktop. Next one's 125. And then that one's ready to save. Desktop, all types, 25. Hit save. There it be. And then the last one, 155. Change this to 1160. Work is 5650. Meters is 7660. And then it's ready to save. Desktop again. Make sure these are right. Boom, bada bing. All types. Save. And there it is. All right. So then the key thing you want to do with these Notepad++ is actually X out of the sheet you're on. Otherwise, it keeps it in there. Every time you open Notepad++, however many of these that you don't X out will still be in there. And you can get lost real quick. So I always X out every time before I close it. So this was the original that I just drug out. It doesn't pull it out of here. You want to make sure it doesn't pull it out of here. But so I can just delete that one. I don't need it. And then I've already got the 106 in here, so I don't need that one. But basically, I just come over here, grab all of these that we just did, except for that 106 because I don't need it. And I just drag all these right into here. And there they all are. And then I can close this. So now, the easiest, quickest way to do it is with Def Generator. The really, really painful, long, take forever way to do it would be to go in manually into the file, go into the def, the vehicle, the truck, and then you would take the 389 EP, which is the one we just added those to. See, they're all there. If I go to any of these other trucks, let's just pick one, Bison. So that 106 is the only additional one other than the stock that came with it, because I've already put it in and put it through the Def Generator, but I haven't done these other trucks yet. So the only way to add all of these to it is you'd have to come in here and drag them into each one of these truck files, and then go in and change the truck name in each one of those engine files. So you can see how that could take forever if you have a ton of trucks. Or you can use the Def Generator and it does all that for you real quick. So you just drag it and drop it in here. Now, there may be other ways to do it. This is the way I've done it, and it works. But again, you have to be very careful. So I go in here and I delete all the trucks except for the one that I've just added the engines to, which, like I said, I usually always use Pitcher's truck because it's generally at the top of the list. You just highlight all the trucks that are in there, delete. I always do this just to make sure. I go up and hit just behind that truck and hit return, and then I hit save and close. So now, and it throws it to the bottom of the list usually whenever you do that. Sometimes it pops right back up there, like now. So then you open Def Generator back up, drag it back in there, and this is where having a list comes in handy. So I've already got a list. Again, it's 314 trucks. So you can imagine having to go in there 313 times and drag all those engines in there and then go into each one of those files and change the truck name 313 times. It'd take you forever. But having this list having the def generator, just copy and paste. So go back in, put the cursor right behind the truck that's in there, hit return. Make sure your spacer is kind of on that line. Right click, paste. Now all those trucks are added. Now, because that truck is in the list already, I have to go back in here and make sure that I don't have duplicates, which I do because that truck's in my list. So I highlight it, backspace one more time because you don't want a blank line in there because all those trucks below there won't get changed. Scroll back down to the bottom, click behind the last truck, hit return, and then if there's a bunch of spaces below here, I'll hit the delete button until it brings that down. Then hit save and close, and boom. So if we go in here now, it's going to have all those trucks added with all those engines. We'll go back to that Bison that we showed you a minute ago that didn't have all of them. Now it's got them all. It only had the 106 was the only additional beyond the stock ones. Now it's got all of them that we just added. So all of them have them. So like I say, there's a couple of modders that the def generator won't work on their engine files on their defs. One specific one is Serial Black. You have to manually do his. I think EL David GT is another one. Some of his do, some of his don't. You just kind of got to play with it. And sadly, all of them, the def generator will work. It will add the trucks to them and make you think that it's working. But when you get in game, they won't show up in game. So, but that's kind of a quick down and dirty how to make some changes to an engine mod, what some of the stuff does, and how to use the def generator. Again, if you're not making changes to the engine files, you just want to add a truck, it's super easy to just use the def generator, find the engine mod you're wanting to add the truck to, and then like I say, you just come down to the bottom of the list once it's in here, click there, hit return, and type in the truck internal name. So another thing of how to find the truck's internal name, you can open up the open def for the truck in question. Let me find. So like, this is Certified Customs FLT. You open the open def of whatever truck it is that you're wanting to add if you don't know the internal name of it. So if you go in the open def, goes def, vehicle, that's the name right there. But to verify, you can open that and go to the engine file. This isn't a good example because his doesn't have engine files in there. Let me find one that does. Hang on. FLX. And yeah, I know I got too many mods. How about we go to one of Ruda's? About the highway killer. There we go. Here's the open definition for Ruda's highway killer. You can go to def, vehicle, truck. Again, That's the internal name, but to verify, click it and then go to the engine file and then just click one of the engines that comes with the truck. You click it and then boom, that right there is the internal truck name. So you can take that, put that in the list somewhere so that you can copy and paste them. All right. Hope this helps. You know, a lot of people get scared of changing things and doing stuff in the game, or just don't know because it's not readily available information. But it's not nearly as difficult as it sounds or is made out to be. So, hope that helped. Everybody have a good day. We'll holler at y'all later. Thanks.